Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. And it was a weird day for gaming. A big Xbox rumor kind of exploded online. I shouldn't say kind of, because it did. Outlets, forums, and just a large part of the community ran with this rumor without really looking into it all that deeply. There was more of this blind faith in this claim, which backfired because Xbox did respond with some official information. So yeah, we're gonna get into their response, why all this happened in the first place, and just general rumor culture as a whole. Also, to add to the strange vibes, Sony's making some more changes to their pricing, and we'll just say it's not trending downward. So lots to get into today. As always, do hit those buttons below. It's greatly appreciated, and it's also a great way for you to stay up to date with all the daily news. Ring that bell. But other than that, let's just go and jump right into our first topic of the day, starting off with Street Fighter 6. They did just have that big showcase yesterday. It was nearly 50 minutes long, and they had a lot to show here. I think, if anything, fans of Street Fighter has to be more than thrilled right now. But really, I'd say there was two big things shown here that I want to talk about. First is, I think by this point, Capcom has made it very clear this is not another Street Fighter V situation. See, when that game was first launched, it did receive some criticism for its light amount of content, but in Street Fighter 6's case, instead, it feels like they are going all out, especially with its single-player World Tour story mode. They did show how expansive it is, and I mean, this might legitimately end up being one of the better fighting game campaigns to date, if it plays as good as it looks. Basically, you can create your own customized avatar with a relatively robust create system. You then have an open world that you can explore where you just take on different battles. You might meet up with some different mainline characters, learn their moves, fight in the streets or whatever. There's RPG elements, and there's just a lot happening with its single-player game mode, and that's kind of the thing here. Of course, Street Fighter is known for its competitive multiplayer, and that's still there, but as a pretty sizable bonus, there's this expansive single-player mode that looks quite interesting. So, big kudos to Capcom here. Now, they also announced a new wave of fighters for its Year 1 DLC, so as content-heavy as it is, they do still have plans for more content post-launch. I think that's rather expected for any modern fighting game anymore. But the other big announcement made here was a new playable demo. A beta was previously rumored, but apparently it's actually a special demo highlighting the character creation and its world tour mode. The only thing about all this, though, is that the demo is getting a staggered release. So if you're on PlayStation, you can actually download it right now. However, if you're on Xbox or PC, you'll have to instead wait for April 26th. All things considered, though, that's not all that egregious, but yeah, there you go. Street Fighter 6 is looking pretty good. Now, we also got an update for Crysis 4. This game was announced early last year, though we haven't really heard much since then, and, well, there might actually be a reason for that. So what's happening here is that it does sound like development is starting to ramp up for its single-player campaign, which is, I mean, that's great news. But here's the thing. Some of these positions include a lead producer, a lead AI programmer, and a lead environment artist. So with several lead roles still vacant, this could be a sign that Crysis 4 is still quite early in development. More or less, on one side of things, it's great to see movement for Crysis 4 at all. It's got a single-player campaign and everything, but at the same time, I think fans might want to temper expectations. It could still be several years before we have it in our hands ourselves. Still, though, I do think it's exciting to know that this game is in development at all, and I think this is a franchise that could really wow people when it does eventually get its gameplay reveal. Because, I mean, just knowing Crytek and their push for state-of-the-art visuals, this game could really turn some heads when it does get that reveal. Now, let's just go and get into this whole Xbox situation, and this was quite amazing to follow in real time, because as soon as this rumor popped up online, I was extremely skeptical. It just did not make any sense at all based on the public information that we already know. We'll get into that in just a moment, but basically what happened here was that Jeff Grubb on his Game Mess podcast claimed that Hi-Fi Rush didn't make the money that it needed to make. So he then kind of questioned the whole Game Pass strategy, but this was a very strange narrative that, of course, exploded online. Outlets, forums, YouTubers, and whatever just kind of ran with this story. I was kind of sitting here, though, and I'm like, hang on, hold up. This doesn't make sense. Where is this information coming from? Because we've heard the exact opposite, and I'll just kind of run through a few examples here. first is shortly after launch, and I think this is the most telling, but Bethesda's vice president in an email said, quote unquote, Hi-Fi Rush is one of the most successful launches for Bethesda and Xbox in recent years. Then we also had Phil Spencer, the Xboss himself, and he publicly praised Hi-Fi Rush and the reaction it got with its shadow launch. He applauded Tango Gameworks and gave them full credit for its release. And that's one of the issues that I have with this narrative that just randomly came out of nowhere. Just 2 months ago, the community was overjoyed about all these shadow launches, whether that be Metroid Prime Remastered, or in this case, Hi-Fi Rush. I mean, it wasn't long ago when the community was just in awe of these decisions, but now all of a sudden, you have this narrative that contradicts the reality to its response. Continuing on, though, we also know that Hi-Fi Rush reached 2 million players shortly after its launch, and even though a large portion of that was likely from Game Pass, we also know that Hi-Fi Rush was charting in the top 10 best-selling games on Steam for a period of time. So the engagement was there, which is important to Xbox, but it did also extend beyond just the Xbox consoles. Then lastly, and this just happened today, the timing here is absolutely perfect, but just months after its launch, Tango Gameworks is now expanding with several new job positions. Again, the timing of that is perfect because you don't expand a studio if they just released a failure. You expand a studio because you see promise. So when you put all this together, this rumor, it just doesn't make sense. And well, about that, lo and behold, after hours and hours of this story just being ran everywhere, Xbox themselves responded. This is coming from Aaron Greenberg, and check out his statement here. He said that Hi-Fi Rush was a breakout hit for us and our players in all key measurements and expectations. We couldn't be happier with what the team at Tango Gameworks delivered with this surprise release. Again, he said in all key measurements and expectations. So there you go. This has been completely debunked. Despite those rumors, Hi-Fi Rush was indeed a success, as I think was already fairly obvious. Now, I want to talk about that, though, because this was such a weird lead-up. I mean, this just blew up online with outlets blindly running with it, and I just don't know why there were no sources to any of the previous information that we already knew. I don't know why there was not more questions about this information. Like, all this information just suddenly didn't exist. Now, at the same time, I don't want to crucify Jeff Grubb here because I personally like him and I think he's a great insider. I mean, don't let him getting something wrong fool you here. He's been accurate a lot of the times in the past, and I don't want anybody to lose sight of that. Seriously, big shout out to Jeff Grubb because I do think that he's great. But in this case, he was wrong. And that does happen with insiders. Sometimes they get it right, and sometimes they get them wrong. Last year, as an example, he claimed that Wind Waker was going to be announced. To be fair, that seemed believable at the time. I believed that there was a possibility of it happening myself, but it didn't. My point is, though, is that insiders, even respectable ones like Jeff Grubb, they do get things wrong at times. That's the life of an insider. Now, I'm sure he'll come back with the correct leak soon enough because he is the often leaky Jeff Grubb, but that's why it's so important to keep in mind to take rumors with a grain of salt until proven true. I think one of the bigger concerns here is just how willing some places are ready to jump onto these negative pieces without really looking too much into it. The truth is, there's no problem with leaks whatsoever, but I do think that there's a healthy dose of skepticism that is needed at times, especially when it comes to negative pieces. I mean, if I really wanted to, I could talk about a Nintendo Switch successor rumor almost every single day on this channel, but the truth is, most of them are not believable. So I don't talk about them. I think with Hi-Fi Rush, though, I think a lot of the reaction that we saw was simply because it was a negative Xbox story. I mean, I get it. I completely understand why this type of stuff happens. A lot of times, bad press for Xbox is good for the media and content creators. But I don't know. The thing for me is just how all this unfolded, because there was so much information that outlets in the community was willing to ignore to fit this narrative. I mean, I guess it is what it is, but it has since been debunked, so it is nice to see Xbox come out here and be so forthcoming about it and just kind of stop the rumors in their tracks. Now, we do also have some PlayStation PC news, though, but maybe not necessarily what fans are hoping for. Of course, we always hope for price decreases, but, it's been a weird generation. Over the last few years, Sony's been no strangers to price hikes, whether that be with their console games or just consoles, period. But now they're taking that over to the PC platform as well, or at least in specific regions. It has now been spotted that Sony's been raising prices for several of their PC games, including Returnal, Spider-Man Remastered, Miles Morales, God of War, and Horizon Zero Dawn in certain regions, being Argentina, Canada, Chile, China, Colombia, Japan, and South Korea. I'll include a picture of all the prices here, but this is something that's been done very quietly. Sony so far has made no public comment about these prices, interestingly enough, and because of its slow rollout, as all this has not immediately happened at once, some fans wonder if maybe more regions will eventually be affected as well. I think what's so surprising about all this, though, is that these are not new games. These are games that's been out for a while. So it's not like their previous price hike on consoles. With that, they let fans know ahead of time that new games will be $70. But here on PC, it seems like they're going back and they're saying, well, these games were actually discounted all along. You just didn't know it. I do kind of wonder, though, if that's maybe because Sony isn't used to being a third-party publisher, so they don't typically share their money from their own developed games. But with their games on Steam, Valve does take, I believe it's a 30% cut. So maybe Sony's reevaluating their prices for that reason. But either way, this is yet another price increase for gaming, though currently just for specific regions. If more regions do start to be affected, however, hopefully that will kind of end there. But if more regions do start to be affected, I, of course, will come back with another update. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though. We're going to ask you all, do you think Sony will acquire a big publisher in response to the Activision Blizzard buyout if it does go through? And as you can see here, there's actually a good portion of you all that believes yes, with 34% of you all voting for that, and then 59% of you all voted for no. So, yeah, there definitely seems to be a good amount of people that believes this will happen. I do see this speculation online quite a bit. I've seen several rumors say that they are preparing for a big acquisition like this. I see Take-Two quite often. Though truthfully, I mean, speaking about rumors earlier and just kind of, using that healthy dose of speculation, I think that's kind of necessary here. I do not believe Sony's going to acquire Take-Two. I mean, Take-Two just acquired Zynga last year for like $12 billion, and Take-Two's already a pretty sizable company themselves with, GTA 6 coming up, so I don't believe they even want to be sold off in the first place, nor do I believe that Sony has the money to pick them up. Now, could they pick up somebody like Square Enix, which they already have a close relationship with? Could they pick up somebody like Sega, Capcom? Those might be a little bit more in their range, but, even then, it takes two to tango. Not only would these companies need to be willing to be sold off in the first place, but also the asking price for these companies are going to be higher than what they are actually, worth. So, I mean, you look at somebody like Bungie as an example. It took multiple $1 billion to acquire them, and they have one IP. So the asking price for some of these big-time publishers with multiple beloved IP could be quite high and maybe out of Sony's price range. But let's just go and say hypothetically they did make an acquisition. I think the one that would probably make the most sense would be Square Enix, just given their relationship with one another. But that's also kind of the thing here. People tend to not acknowledge this all that much, but Square Enix also has a very good relationship with Nintendo. In fact, some of their games just fit better on a Nintendo platform. Take a look at something like Live Alive HD, Bravely Default, or something like Octopath Traveler. These are Square Enix IP that fits very well on that Nintendo platform, and that's a pretty good portion of Square Enix's business. Those AAA games, they do fit better, of course, on PlayStation, but those smaller scale games, they fit really well on the Switch, and they do seem to have a lot of success there. For me, though, I don't really foresee a big publisher acquisition suddenly becoming a common thing in the game industry. I think Sony will more than likely just kind of stick with what they've been doing for such a long time, because they've had a ton of success with that. But I mean, at the same time, the game has certainly changed. I never would have thought that big publisher acquisitions would have been a thing in the first place, but here we are. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode. But if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.